Welcome to the 2-month review, the weekly podcast brought to you by Open Letter and 3%, in which we take a single book, break it down bit by bit, read it slowly, talk about it, dissect it, make jokes, entertain ourselves, entertain you. All supposed to be a bunch of fun related to one long work of literature. I'm Chad Post from Open Letter Books, and I'm joined as always by Brian Wood.
Hi, Chad. Way to botch the beginning, right up. Season 8. Let's do this.
Season 8. You think I would be prepared, and I would have had some practice doing this by now, but alas, no.
Wait, who am I? Where am I?
What is this thing that we're
doing?
What
am I?
But this season, the 8th season, we're going to be doing Codex 1962, a trilogy from Sjón. We're going to start it next week. Next week, there will be no YouTube broadcast, but next Thursday, the podcast will come out on May, whatever that is, 2nd. That will be the first 57 pages. The full entire reading thing is online. The whole scheme, the whole schedule, all that's online. I'll share it within the show notes here too. But next week is when we're going to get into the book itself. But this week we thought we'd just talk about Sjón, about Iceland, about all that kind of fun stuff, sort of set the stage.
So for somebody like me, I think the first step with this, so it's pronounced Sjón. The author's name is Sjón.
Not sure.
Okay. Well, let's mess it up.
Look that up.
Let's mess it up the entire season until he comes on.
I've met him many times, and I've always said that. Okay, so according to the what do they call it, where it tells you how to pronounce things? The pronunciation guide. There's a word for that. Okay. Phonetics, whatever. Sure. That it's SYOHN.
SYOHN. Sjón.
Sjón.
Okay. Sounds good. Someone can fix it for us. Is he? He's Icelandic?
He is Icelandic.
Okay.
If
someone knows of the Icelandic peoples and cultures, please inform us and tell us what we're doing wrong.
Well, I guess it would be Sjón. Sjón would make more sense. Sjón is easier to say. Sjón would probably make more sense because it's an abbreviation of his name, of Sigurjón Bigger Sigurdsson. And so it's a condensed version of that with just the S and the JON part. So it's Sigurjón, it'd be Sjón. Sjón.
Have we ever figured out why Chardé isn't pronounced Sade? That's the most
told me.
Yeah, that is the most bizarre one, right?
Yeah.
I remember being a kid and like hearing Chardé and be like, yeah, I'm kind of digging this. And then I went to go I was looking everywhere in the library for her album. Because back then I would just get them from the library and then do the press record on the tape deck and pirate that way, right? Well, and I was looking everywhere for Chardé, SH, maybe it's CHAR. I could not find her anywhere, and I finally went to the library and I'm like, you know that lady that sings "This Is No Ordinary"? She was like, "Oh, Chardé." I'm like, yeah, could you help me find that? She's like, "Oh, right here." Sade?
Sade?
What? It's not Chardé.
Nope.
So I don't know. Maybe Sjón he'll come in oh, it's actually Ralph. It's pronounced Ralph. So, oh shit, we weren't even close.
Oh my god.
You polar bear people are crazy, man.
That's all there is. There's just polar bears in Iceland.
There's polar bears in Bjork. That's all they've got.
And he's involved with Bjork, so we've got that connection. We got that already. Everyone in Iceland knows each other. It's amazing. Have you been there before?
I have not. I've flown over it. That's about it.
You've flown over? Okay. Because a lot of people, I feel like a lot of people have been there because there's so many cheap flights in which you stop in Iceland and then continue onwards.
Oddly enough, my wife really wants to go there badly. It's high up on our list to go visit Iceland, which makes sense because I think the Earth is trying to swallow it. There's all those volcanic stuff going on there. So we better hurry before it is swallowed up.
Well, I mean, it is a volcanic. I mean, it's a volcano. It's making it bigger. The volcano's making Iceland more. They're giving you more Iceland.
They're slowly trying to take over.
It's the best. It's the best place.
No, it looks amazing. It looks really amazing.
It is incredible. We've done a lot of Icelandic books, but we're doing some on some nonfiction, Icelandic nonfiction in the near future about their resources and climate and all that kind of stuff and their rivers, and they don't use any fossil fuels. It's all renewable energy there, but they sold off parts of it to multinational corporations, which is problematic for a lot of people's views. But it is it's amazing because it feels like an idyllic place. And when we did the other Icelandic book for the 2-month review, Thomas Jansson bestseller, we got into a lot of discussion about the fact that it is that kind of idyllic island that's being invaded almost continuously by like tourists or by islands are weird as countries because they seem like they're set apart. They're their own little culture, which leads to like the nationalistic sort of branding. But then with Iceland, we're being so open and having so many tourists, they have the opposite problem where there's so many people going there that all their natural stuff is getting wrecked. Yeah. And like they want to get rid of tourism.
It's always like, you know, people want to point to, especially like Scandinavian countries or Iceland, where, you know, look what they're able to do with renewable energy and this, or social programs, and then the first thing they always fire back with, well, yeah, but like the population is 9.
Yeah.
and it's racially homogenous, so like people just get along easier because everybody's the same there. Like,
this is a fact. This is
it
very
seems like,
true.
but that would make sense with islands. It makes sense that'd be smaller population, more racially homogenous, easier to get stuff done. Like, yeah.
Similar sort of setup. Yeah, it is.
So what we got to do is introduce a couple religions, and they'll just start killing each other like crazy,
and
it'll be all in turmoil.
I think maybe that's where Iceland's where you go to start the cult. Iceland's a good cult country.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's a lead. Like that's where no one's gonna fuck with you in Iceland.
Weird. So we're on to season 8. And Chad, I don't know if you know this, but right now is season 8 of Game of Thrones.
Oh, you're right. Well,
I don't know if you've heard. Yeah.
You know, this is our final swans.
Which is the last season? So is this the final?
Final season.
I don't want to read between the lines, but is this the final season? And there's a guy on Game of Thrones called The Mountain, which I'm sure you know because you watch that show like crazy.
I've watched every episode backwards.
And he's a strongman from the actor is a strongman from Iceland.
Really?
So, yeah. One of the characters. There you go.
All connected.
It all connects. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No, this is not going to be our last season. But,
okay, all right.
But we are going to be more popular than Game of Thrones after this season.
Perfect.
Because they're not going to be around.
There's going to be some full frontal nudity and dragons on this episode. Get ready.
Yeah. That's our selling point, is like just full frontal. Just like that's not going to get us any viewers. That is going to scare people.
I joke with my wife that the reason Game of Thrones is so popular is because it's just boobies and dragons, and like that hits a lot of people. At the very first episode, there's a scene where there's a dude in a brothel, and it's just like gratuitous nudity everywhere, and they're talking about dragons while they're pleasuring the man. And I'm like, see, there you go.
That's it. That's all you need.
We're 10 minutes in. It's just boobs and dragons. This is the whole show. And then a beheading every now and then. Like,
yeah. Yeah, right. Little bit of violence, a lot of boobies.
Yeah.
Like I don't watch the show, but I did see on my news feed, it was all about this last premiere, like the season premiere or whatever. It was all about like some character that had a sex scene, or it made everyone flooded to like her Wikipedia page to make sure she was of age. Because they were like, apparently like was 11 when the show started, and everyone was still like, oh no.
It was wrong. Wait. It was really creepy. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I didn't like it at all. Yeah.
So anyway, Sjón is the author of lots of books.
I'm going to go with Sjón until told otherwise.
Sjón.
Introduce me. Let's do this.
So I have some of his books here. I don't know where the rest of them are. I've taught his books before in class. The first one that came out, FSG did a series of 3 of them that all had these similar covers that people watching on the YouTube channel can see. Otherwise, you can find it online. But like the 3 books were The Blue Fox, The Whispering Muse, and From the Mouth of the Whale. They're very slender books. Like this is the longest one, is 220 pages. And they're written in a way that has a lot of air to them, and a lot of like, they're very poetic, but in a way that's imagistic, that feels almost ethereal. Like there's ideas that come up in the books that are like hard to put together. Like to see how the shape of these books come together is a challenge. And that's kind of what makes them very compelling to me too, that they have like a lot of space to them, a lot of like a very spread out sort of decompressed idea. And then, so he did those 2 books. And then there's a book called Moonstone that I taught in my class last year or the year before. It's called The Boy Who Never Was. That's similar. It's about like a gay boy in Iceland growing up. And then it ends with like everything's sort of reversed and the boy disperses into like a sea of butterflies. And it has that same sort of feeling of like, it's very weighty and interesting and like has really interesting like social commentary and like plottedness, but at the same time feels like at any point in time, it's like just holding itself together by like little threads. And I think with Codex, which I have read and we'll be rereading for this, there's a slight difference in that it's framed as a trilogy. It's was published separately. The 3 volumes were published separately in Iceland. They were brought together here as one book. I'm
only reading 1 volume. I'm not reading all 3 because I signed up to read a book, not 3 books.
That's fair. That's totally fair. So they came out in 1994, 2001, and then 2016 were the 3 volumes. So that's like a pretty long period of time.
Yeah.
To space these out. And they have a similar sort of feeling in a way, but they're more concrete than his earlier books. There's more plot, there's more momentum. But one thing that I'm going to say as a preface to this before we talk more about like him as a person is that one question that will remain with you through the end is who is talking. And this is one thing that I would point to.
This is just like Game of Thrones.
It's just like Game of Thrones.
Who is this? I don't even know who that person is.
Who is the Winter Soldier? No, Winter Giants, Whispering Giants, Giant.
Yeah,
there's ice, right? Something.
Yeah, there's all that. That's all there.
Frost Giants.
Sure.
Am I close?
You're getting there.
Okay. Yeah, but it
is. David Lynch is directing the last 2 episodes. So just
are you serious? I'd totally sign up for that. I would watch David Lynch do that.
Of course he's not. Are you kidding me?
I know, but I would watch that.
Did you see what he did to Dune?
I would watch that again too. I've been rewatching all of his movies. They're so good. They're so good. Mulholland Drive is still so good.
So he's a musician and a writer, or is he a writer and doesn't matter which one he is? Is he identified more as a musician?
I think that in Iceland now he's identified more as a writer.
As a writer, okay.
As a writer, but I think initially a lot of his success came through music, and a lot of success for like Icelandic artists seem to come through music. We have Bragi Olufsen, who he published, was part of the Sugar Cubes, as was Sjón as well. He played as Johnny Triumph in the Sugar Cubes, which is Bjork's band. There's the Sigaros, all the like Icelandic bands that became rather popular. I think drew a lot of attention to Iceland, and he had that song that's from Dancer in the Dark that he wrote for Bjork. That was the finalist or one of the runner-up for the Academy Award for music.
It's called a nominee.
Finalist. It's a finalist.
He took the bronze medal at the Oscars.
He took not first place. The song is called "I've Seen It All." Is the name of it. Was nominated for Academy Award and a Golden Globe.
Wow, nice.
But so I think that his work as a poet started first, and he was a poet. But that leads very directly, I think, into lyrics and into working with more musical artists, and then as he wrote more books and became more well-known as a writer, I think he's doing more writing now than music, but I might be wrong.
Sounds just incredibly creative and artistic and able to do all that. Wow.
These people in Iceland are like that. I have this, that's just my hot take, is that they're all like multidisciplinary artists. And maybe it's because it's a small country and because you can be involved with so many different creative fields without, having that much distance. Like in a way, like, it's weird because this is a bad analogy, but it's sort of like how it would be very hard to be involved in like Hollywood without being in Los Angeles, but that would cut you off in certain ways from other artistic enterprises. Even though they're there, you get into your silo. And I feel like in Iceland, because everything's so close and close knit, that everyone's can be part of these other projects and explore their creativity in ways that like are bound by the divisions of like business and culture, the way that they kind of have to be here because we have so many people competing for so little resource. So
it's more like a creative art scene versus like if you move to New York City, there's the literary scene, there's the fine art scene, there's the film scene, like, there's like those little silos of, sure. I mean, and you collaborate with each other, obviously. You're not completely, on an island.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But there they are.
But like Jan Gunnar is a good example of that too. Like he was like a comedian and an actor, becomes mayor, and like as a writer as well. Like they're sort of that pathway doesn't feel anomalous the way that I think it would if you were a writer /
just somebody that has an amazing haircut.
Yeah, they have good hair. I find Icelandic people to be rather attractive.
They rock like weird mullet cuts that just look like really cool. It's not like remember like when the fashion mullet was a thing, like coming out of Spain, and like cool people in Europe would have like these like wispy long fashion mullet things for a while. It's like, no, we've been doing that since about 700. Like that's our jam. We got this. Cute, nice try. I'm gonna overhead clap now. Bye. Like,
yeah, Iceland's really hot too because of their soccer team.
So why is it then? What about it? Like, because you've done quite a few books from Iceland, right? I mean, all things considered, like for the size that they are, why? What about their books are so appealing to you, where you want to keep translating stuff from Iceland?
Oh, it's interesting. Let me see if I can define this. Litton's talked about this with me a lot. When he translates. Lytton Smith has translated a lot of them.
Yeah,
I think he's translated all but one of the Icelandic books that we've published, and he's doing the ones in the future too. So like he's our Icelandic guy. Did he do this one or no?
No,
Victoria Cribb translated this. I should have said that up front too. Who I know Victoria Cribb like through social media, but I don't think I've ever met her. But I'll try and reach out to her and see if she'll come on the show.
Yeah, it'd be great to talk to her.
Yeah, because he's going to come on at the end, which will be fun. He's very excited about it. And I think it'll be great to talk to him about the book after we've gone through it. But he's just a really, really, really nice guy.
Yeah.
And very, very smart and like, well-spoken. Really, and he's very impressive. He ran Penn Iceland for a while too. I don't know if he does anymore, but he was running their Penn organization and organizing like the literary festival that would take place in Reykjavik and bringing people from all over the world there. He's just a really, really good person, a really good writer. But the thing that interests me is that there's a certain tone. Lytton talks a lot about how, because it's Iceland as an island, that there's a lot of writing in Iceland that deals with like boxes and like spaces. And so like our first book, Pets, is like all takes place with a character under a bed. That there's something about like the narrative focus becomes like these sort of like, they're very obsessed with like the spatial nature of the space of the place that they're writing from and of the character. So like the new book that we have coming out, History and Mess, is about a woman, it's by Bragi's wife, Sigrun Pálsdóttir. And the book is about this woman who finds she's doing research on like art history, and she finds in this diary proof that this artist that they thought was male, like one of the first early artists, was actually female. She's convinced that this person was a female, and she writes an entire like thesis on this discovery, and it's going to make her famous because it upends like the idea of who the artist was and how this patronage came about and so on and so forth. It's this huge thesis. And then at the last moment, she realizes that she had screwed up and that there was like 2 pages had been stuck together and she was wrong, and that was not true. So she doesn't know what to do, and she's like wigging out and like losing her mind and like, very, very anxious. And a lot of the book takes place with her going into this like hidden room in which she like sort of hallucinates dwarves and like other stuff, and is having a mental breakdown in this small closet.
Naturally,
like, yeah, as you do. But like, it's another one of these instances where there's this like box aspect to it.
Yeah.
But there's something within that I feel like it makes the creativeness of the books appealing and gives them a freedom that it doesn't feel like it's forcing plot. Like a lot of places force a plot. And in a lot of Icelandic books, they don't feel like they're forcing a plot. They just let things unfold. So like even in Pets, Bragi's book where the character's under the bed, there's a lot of stuff that happens. All these characters show up at his house. This love affair that he'd started is culminated with his nemesis. There's lots of things that take place, but it's all like within this physical space of him being there. It's almost Beckettian in a way, like where his characters never move or do things, but yet they have like all these ideas and thoughts and whatever. And there's something about that appeals to me. But I also feel like there's just something very crisp about their writing. It's very cool, and like not to be like use the Nordic cool sort of tagline that a lot of those places like to use, but there is something like clean and efficient and like vital in a way that doesn't feel like it's trying to be a typical plotted novel. You know what? Okay, wait. I'm sorry. I'm going to talk a lot, but this is the thing. So that book that I told you to read, The Meander, Spiral, Explode, there's a lot of talk in there about the other ways in which people create patterns in text. And rather than is it Freitag's triangle, like the rising action and the falling, that wave, wave, the arc of the wave. And that's what we've been told over and over again, that's what you should write like. That's how people are instructed. It's simple. But there are many, many, many other examples of other types of of patterning. And I feel like Icelandic books have a different sort of patterning, and that's something that appeals to me. And that appeals to me within all books, like that don't follow that normal thing. But I feel like it's very evident in theirs that they don't tend to have that rise and decline, that there's some other way that they shift their narratives and they play with time and they play with space that makes it a different sort of pattern when you read it.
Yeah, it seems like too that you're very interested in ways of how can things be disordered and like chaotic in a way,
right?
Not chaos for the sake of chaos, but just like upending norms and systems and bucking trends. And can we do something different, please? Can we think different? Like
her thing, Jane Allison's bit is that these patterns are replicated in nature. That there are a lot of other patterns that we see in nature and that are part of like our thinking and influence the way that we construct our thoughts and construct our narratives and construct the way we tell stories. But yet we don't acknowledge them generally because there's been this idea from Aristotle that like the dramatic tension is, the rise, the climax, the denouement. Yeah. And like we've stuck with that forever. But like Aristotle's, was writing about drama like what, 4,000 years ago?
Sure, we'll just throw out dates. That's fine. Yeah, whatever.
I don't know, man. It could have been last week. Time is irrelevant.
Yeah.
But like
it was a long time ago.
It was a long ass time ago. It was before Christ, if I remember right.
Yes.
So long. But like, we're using that pattern.
Poetics, I assume.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So like the adherence to that seems illogical if you put it into any other context. And the fact that we do have so many other examples of stuff, trees, like circular things, other spirals,
Fibonacci sequences and golden ratios and
all that kind of stuff that we internalize. But yet for when it comes to books, people are like, no, arc, triangle, nothing else. This is bizarre. So I like the other patterns. I think because I think my mind is maybe broken and maybe likes those patterns, feels more comfortable with those patterns than like the normal narrative arc.
Yeah, interesting.
And this book does that. It has 3 acts. It is a trilogy, and the third act is a sort of explosion. But I think thinking about it through this lens of patterning, I think I'm going to see something much more unique this time reading it through than I did the first time, where I was trying to figure out like who's talking, how does this connect, and what is real and what is not real, which is a lot of questions at the beginning of this book.
Well, for me, I'm excited. I don't know if I've read any Icelandic literature.
You didn't read Bragi's the narrator, did you?
I don't believe so. No.
It's an interesting book that like I don't think it was everyone's favorite book of his, but I think it's really interesting because it is sort of like it ties into like the incel movement and the anti-chads in a way that's like it's unique and kind of unsettling. Yeah. And I think that maybe people didn't care for that, but
sure.
It wasn't his intent. He wrote it totally separate, but the character is like one of those sorts of people.
And also this book is on the long list for the Best Translated Book Award, right?
Absolutely. This is my pick to win.
Okay.
But I'm usually wrong, so we'll say I'm going to be wrong, but this season would end after that award's announced. So if it wins, we'll know during the course of the season.
Cool. No, I'm excited because I think once I finish this one, I'll have read, I think, 5 books that are on the long list right now, which for me is a lot. Normally I'll read like 2 books of translation for the whole year, maybe. So I'm doing my part,
Adding, making it happen.
Yeah. Got to check off all the boxes of what makes me okay as a reader.
Yeah.
Did you read something translated? Yes. 2 times.
It is funny. What would you if you met someone and they're like, I'm a reader, what criteria do they have to be considered a serious or good reader in your opinion?
Oh dear. That's crazy, I think. Like just as long as whatever you read, like you read it, enjoy what you're reading first and foremost. Like who can, like if you really like reading mysteries, like then just devour mystery. That's fine. Like, and then know about different types of way to write. Like you could write it the author Conan Doyle way, or you could write it the Carl Hiaasen way, or Agatha Christie, like whatever. Just read everything.
Yeah.
But this idea of like, you have to read some translated literature, some short story collections. Make sure you throw some poems in there. Like what. I don't know. Just read what you want.
It's interesting. I wonder if it to me it connects to like being a global citizen of literature, I guess.
Sure.
That you have some, like, because you can just read for entertainment. That's totally fine. And people I don't know, so I think that there's a group of people who read for entertainment who don't know the difference between Conan Doyle and Carl
Sure.
Hiaasen or whatever. They're just like, a book is a book is a book.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is something to like being aware on a secondary level of either the craft or of like the where it's coming from or something that makes people like more literary citizens.
Well, I'm reading completely as a thief. Like everything I'm reading, I'm so inspired by, and I'm writing down like I'm stealing this, I'm stealing this, I love that. Like, and so, you know, like I don't read mysteries, but if I was going to read mysteries, I'd want to know like everybody's taking from everybody else, and I want to know what they took, why they took it, like, and so you have to know the history, you have to know other, like, you know, everything's in conversation with each other, and so that's why I'm really interested with translated literature, because obviously, you know, I went through the traditional route of getting a degree in English and then getting your MFA in creative writing, and like it's very Eurocentric for the most part. There's not a lot of American literature, obviously. So you go through the British canon, you get a little bit of Europe. You could take like a class, like I took, I think, West African literature. So, you know, you get like the broad brushstrokes of Things Fall Apart and, you know, So Long a Letter, like a couple of the like popular West African books. And then some American lit stuff, like you could do that within like 4 or 5 classes, right? Because American lit's like 8 years old. But like that's basically all you're getting, right?
Yeah.
Like you get some African American literature like in there as well. Like it gets its own little class that you get to take.
Yep.
A short story class that you get to take. But then like you never like, oh, you mean they write in Asia? Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah.
I thought Russia is the only Asia that counts, right? Like
Dostoevsky was the end of that.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing after that. And so to me, like, it's crazy, like getting introduced to open letter, like there's this huge giant blind spot in my reading. And especially doing this show with you completely exposes over and over and over again, like, no, you're not well read. You might think you can keep up in a conversation at a cocktail party. You know, like I can keep up, but I am not well read. I don't know anything about anything. Like I just dabbled a little bit in South America, and it's like, oh shit, there is a lot down there. Holy cow!
Yeah, this is true.
I'm not ready to get into that yet.
Well, thankfully, like
it's frustrating.
Thankfully, 100 Years of Solitude will be on Netflix soon, so you can just like bypass that one.
I got Borges and that. I'm done.
Good. Sold. So I have a question about that too. Like, so you read a lot more for craft ideas, it seems, and like look at books through that lens of like how it can impact your writing. Have you found in reading books in translation that you've seen different things that you can use for different craft things that you can pick up on and use in your writing than you do when you read American or British literature? Or is it similar, just like a wider conversation or a different sort of scope?
I think if we're being very vague with terminology, like Western literature, you know, like for the most part Europe, but it's mostly like British and American literature. I find there's less experimentation in like in a broad general sense. You get a lot of cinematic realism. And with global literature or translated literature, to me, it's just like the creativity is much more expanded as far as like I guess there's like this tradition that we do with American literature that, you know, like you said, it's inciting incident, increasing like, you know, your basic story structure stuff. Yeah. And it flows nice, like, and there's nothing wrong with that. It works. It's a human story we've been telling forever. But I feel like with translated literature, it can be just like, I don't know. It's kind of like when you watch Pulp Fiction for the first time, you're like, oh, I didn't realize movies could be like that. Yeah. It's like, well, if you watched any French cinema, you'd realize, they've been doing this a long time. You can tell stories a different way. Like, it's true. And so for me, it's very eye-opening on experimentation. And like the first time I started really experimenting with my own writing was when it's a dumb term, but when I discovered, you know, Latin American literature, like, holy crap, these people do some amazing stuff down here. Whoa. I had no idea you could do that. And like for them, it was stories. Yeah. And like for them, it was like maybe Kafka, you know, like, oh, I had no idea you can turn somebody into a cockroach and just not explain that. That's pretty cool. Right. Like they didn't teach me that in class. That's cool. And so I think for me, like one, I just enjoy learning about people from other places and new worldviews. I think you're just a better human being doing that.
Yeah.
Two, I can steal more stuff because, but yeah, it feels to be more, for me, it's more experimental and willing to take more chances in how it tells stories.
You said something along there that resonates a lot, where referring to like Western literature as like cinematic realism. I wonder if that's more of why I like I'm drawn more to international books, because they aren't usually as cinematic. Like we're very visually focused culture. And part of that is like that people, I don't know why, but part of it is nowadays is that everything should be optioned for a movie or a TV show. So like the money that's involved there, the primacy of like, I'm going to go see Avengers tomorrow. With a lot of other people there. This is a dumb statistic that I'm using in a different article, but and it's a dumb, fallacious comparison, but I want to make it anyways, is that the best-selling book in 2018 in Great Britain, in the United Kingdom, sold 800,000 copies, right? 20 times that number of people saw Captain Marvel on the first 3 days that it was out. So like our scales are so far apart. And I feel like that primacy and that importance given to cinema and to TV and to the image isn't as quite as clear in international books that I like. Like they're still like into the word and into like the thought and the idea that comes about through that medium in a way that like a lot of contemporary Western writing has become more immersed in like wanting to be immersive literature, where you can see it, visualize it, and it could become something else.
Yeah, it's funny. It goes way before that even. There's a director, I forget his name, but he's considered the father of modern cinema. And just a second, hon. And it's like it sounds like it's two initials and the last name. It was like the early 1900s. Right. And so he invented all the modern shots that we use in cinema, as it was a burgeoning art form. And so they asked him like, well, where did you get these? Like, where did you come up with the language of cinema? And he's like, well, like it's easy. Like all these shots were in Charles Dickens. Like if you read any book, if you read any of Dickens, like it's all the same thing. Like you focus in, you slide right, you slide. So like cinematic realism took place with British literature. Like they'd been writing in a realistic way. And then cinema took from that, and then I think they're just kind of repeating each other.
I mean, it is D.W. Griffith. That's how there is how is I going to frame this? Yeah. So like there has always been an urge for writing to become a better descriptor of reality. Yeah. That like the next advancement is how better to describe reality. So you have like Balzac and like that dirty realism after the Dickens sort of clean Victorian realism. And then you end up with like the modernist moment where they're like, no, those descriptions don't matter because there is no objectivity. It's all in your mind and how the mind processes these things. So we keep advancing in those ways. And it feels like right now, like we've gotten to that point where it is like back to external reality plus like some sort of like mind consciousness.
Yeah. Almost like
the author, of the creator.
Right. A pushback from postmodernism.
Right.
Because it makes me wonder, like everybody makes fun of Franzen. Why is Franzen so popular and stuff? And well, look what he did.
He just wrote a movie.
Yeah, I mean, like
in book form.
It's like I don't need you to rewrite Pamela. I'll go read Pamela if I want to read something like long and boring. But no, like you look back, like this is stuff people like. This is stuff people crave for. I'm going to do it in a literary way, like in my own way for modern times and modern problems. And it's just you just went back to realism, right? I mean.
Yeah. And like, there's like a little bit of consciousness, a little bit of social like, constructs. And like,
for me, I'm like reading this stuff going like, oh God, why can't we, why like postmodern was cool. Like, well, what's the next thing? I want to know what the next thing is. Can we push towards that, please?
I feel like that maybe is like, I feel like that maybe is where a lot of translations and international voices are kind of pointing a different pathway. Yeah. This isn't to dismiss American writing or British writing, nor to dismiss like the MFA programs, but there is like a way in which that narrative arc and that style is eminently teachable. And there's something that's like, no, your language first and whatever, and like thinking of different structures or whatever, that's a hard thing to like inform people on. It's much, I mean, I gave this speech yesterday to my class on like how to propose books to to publishing houses and how to pitch them. And it's like, the most important thing to keep in mind is to make things, make sure that people have to make the fewest number of decisions. You don't want an editor to think about things. You want it to be almost like there's one decision to make, and it's that they're going to publish this book. Don't have them raise questions. The more questions, the more difficulty that you have to think through, the harder it is, they won't do it.
Yeah.
Like, make things as smooth and as easy as possible. And in some ways, like, that sort of literature that we're sort of dismissing isn't that it deserves to be dismissed, but it is that it is very, very replicable. And it's something that you can easily tell people, do it this way, you're not doing it this way. Whereas something like what I think we'll find in this book and in the books we've been covering in here is that they are much more of like this linguistic network that isn't necessarily just like, it's going to play with that. This book will start out playing in a very, very familiar territory with like a kind of Victorian seeming drama, but it's going to do other things along that way. But it uses those.
That's good, because I do actually like those kind of books too.
Yeah.
So I'm really good. Give me some footing.
Yeah, you can't go completely away from that. None of the like, this book definitely doesn't. But like, there is a book. There's a secret. If I can sign this book on this week, I will unveil it on a future episode of 2 Month Review. But there is a book that has no footing that I want to do, that has no context and is wild. And there's a reason I want to do it, and I will explain that. I don't want to say anything more here because I do not want anyone to take this from me.
You need to get a sticker that says like Chad W. Post approved, with a little like those little stickers that, like, it's been stamped like, oh, this must be a weird one then if it's a Chad W. Post approved book.
This book is the most Chad book that you will ever encounter. When you find out about this, you're gonna be like, oh shit, like, yeah, this is self-indulgent in a way, but whatever. It's also an amazing project. When you hear about it, it's gonna blow your mind. It's gonna blow your mind.
All right.
But
look forward to it.
I'll tell you secretly tonight.
Okay, good. Ooh, secrets.
if you come to the poetry reading, have a little absinthe, a little Sazerac, and I'll tell you a secret.
Sounds good.
What else is there anything else to say about him or about the book? I mean, we haven't really framed this that well, but I think that people should just jump into it. It was a very popular book when it came out, got a lot of attention. It is very readable. It is more readable. It's like on the Radiant Terminus side of things in comparison to other books on the show, or like Merce Roderado, where that's not like unreadable. Yeah. It's just interesting ideas. And this is, keep in mind, it's a trilogy. I would suggest paying attention to who you think is talking, and then the story is within that. So it's kind of a frame setup, and the 3 parts of this trilogy build in a way that is like phenomenal. Awesome. And I really, really, really like this book, and I think everyone should get a copy of it. I think you should support him. I think that he's one of the most interesting voices working today, and I'm really excited that we're going to be able to go through this with the guests that we have lined up too. A lot of people wanted to come on the show because they're all fans of him or this book. It's very popular among like the literary and book selling set.
Where do they get the book? Is it through FSG is the publisher of this one? Yeah,
FSG is the publisher. The one thing I don't know is when the paperback is coming out. Right now, there's the hardcovers available, and you can get it at any bookstore. You can get it online at Powell's, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, IndieBound. It is widely available because FSG is like very, very, very clearly like a big press, one of the biggest presses, and they're doing a lot of good stuff. Let me see if I can figure out when the paperback's coming. It might be very soon.
Looking at that, I was wondering, it made me think of with Americans and cinematic realism is as like, I'm going through the process of getting my book coming out, and it's making me realize now that like it's becoming a product. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if there's more leeway with translations where your product doesn't necessarily have to sell a bunch, or it has to be commercially viable in the way a piece of American fiction, if they want to sell it, like how do you, if it's a straightforward type of story that we know, right? Like the cinematic realism, the triangle, is that if an agent's pitching that to an editor, for instance, is it easier to package this product if it's something that's a little more comfortable to tell to an audience?
This is another semi-secretive thing, but one of the things I'm thinking of working on this summer is for my own writing is a bit about how there's at least two minds. that are at play in relation to culture, like there are for most other things. And one is that when you're pitched that from an American author, you're going to have certain expectations that are at play, that the American author can promote themselves, that they're here, that their book fits in with the American type of writing. And that is smooth and easy. And the pitch has to deal with, like, for a book like your book, the pitch from the agent would be like, it has this sort of dark comedy. It has these recognizable tropes. It fits. What
give them some high concept image, right?
High concept image.
It's Indiana Jones in space, right? Who's not going to want that?
Yeah,
oh,
exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
And then the second set is when you're getting a book from an international author, you're working in a different mindset where it's not so much about the story being saleable so much as the context of that author and that product being, or that publication being important in some way. Okay. So there's a lot more cultural cachet that comes along with publishing a book that might override like the sense of its saleability through that description of the triangle and like that part of it. That's there. It's definitely there. There's a lot of publishers who are looking just for those kind of books, and they're very notable. But but the people who are more invested in the idea of literature and not necessarily the saleability of the books seem to work on these two different mindsets depending on where that book is. And it's like we frame the world as us and as something else.
Yeah. Well, just look at the packaging of his books. It looks like it's the name first, right? The name is the biggest thing. Like you're selling the name.
That name is being sold. That name is being sold. Even on here, the name is given equal size to CoDex. It's larger than CoDex in 1960.
So that makes total sense because you're selling the author. Like, this is an important piece of literary work. It doesn't matter what the work is. It's written by him. You want it. Go get it.
Right. Yeah. There's more to this that I haven't figured out and that I can't really explain in the short podcast thing, but there is there's differences. And I think that it impacts the way we think about culture and the way that we think about the other and the way that we think about all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Because you've made it when, like, as an American author, for instance, being sold in America, when like your cover looks like Stephen King's or Patterson's, where it's like 2/3 of it is just the name recognition. It doesn't matter what this story is. It's by me. So you're going to like it. Like, go buy it.
It is the brand. See, we're going to talk about this next week on the podcast, but there's a, Penguin Random House is launching a loyalty program where for every like 12 books you buy from Penguin Random House, you get something free, which is just insane, since it's like it's like they own 75% of the entire book market. It's like it's like getting a reward for breathing. Like, there's something about it that just feels wrong. Like, okay, like I bought a book, so therefore it's one of yours inevitably. Like, you own everything. You don't need a loyalty program. Fuck you, Penguin Random House. Be more creative. Anyway, so yeah, I don't have anything else to add to this. I think that this book is great, and I think we're gonna really enjoy it. And one other note is that he was born in 1962, which is another component to this. So his birth date coincides with this CoDex 1962 date. And I think that you might hone in on that pretty early too. So tips for people reading: pay attention to that, pay attention to who's talking, and then enjoy the Gollum.
All right, so we're 1 to 57. 1 to 57. All right,
yeah,
I'll be ready.
It's the first like 6 chapters, I believe. There's a lot of the first. I mean, it begins with like a lot of space and like a quick little section. There's a lot of blank pages, so it's not as long as it seems. It's also like a book that is narrow, so it's and not super dense, so it's going to be quicker than one might think. So even though it seems long, I suggest get on board. The paperback doesn't come out till September, so you have to get the hardcover or the ebook.
No worries. Alrighty.
And we'll for music this season, I think that outro music should be a runner-up for the Academy Award for music from all the different years.
Sounds good.
Just some random tune.
Yeah.
I barely even knew that there was this Academy Award for music, so I don't pay attention to stuff. Okay, cool. I will talk to you soon. I'll talk to you, for next week where we'll record. We're going to have the special guest of my class. So
awesome. Sounds great. See you then.
Have fun. Take care.